Welcome back to Under Baobab Skies. Tonight, we delve into the captivating world of medieval West African empires, where power, trade, and intrigue intertwined like the roots of an ancient tree, and more. Let the whispers of forgotten winds caress your ears. Let the echoes of long-silenced drums reverberate in your chest. Picture a time when the great empires of Ghana, Mali, and Songhai weren't just chapters in a dusty textbook, but living, breathing realms that shaped the destiny of a continent. Here, beneath skies vast enough to swallow empires whole, the glint of gold and the rustle of salt-laden caravans told stories that still resonate today. Empires in West Africa weren't just about conquest. They were about connection, they were about culture. They were about the delicate balance between power and faith. In every royal court, every bustling market, every whispered legend passed down through generations, you'd find traces of these mighty realms, though you rarely see the sweat and blood that built them. This episode invites you deep into that world of kings and traders, griots and warriors. But don't expect simple tales of glory. Expect complex webs of allegiance, the clash of cultures along ancient trade routes, and entire societies that pulsed with the rhythm of gold dust and manuscript ink. We'll journey through the opulent halls of Mansa Musa's court, feel the weight of salt blocks carried across scorching deserts, listen to the wisdom of Timbuktu's scholars, and witness the rise and fall of empires that once held the world in awe. Picture yourself in the heart of medieval Kambisela, capital of the Ghana Empire. The air is thick with the scent of spices and incense. Around you, adobe buildings rise like sentinels, their walls telling silent tales of wealth and power. In the distance, you hear the low rumble of approaching camel caravans, bringing riches from lands beyond the horizon. This is a crossroads of continents, where Berber traders from the north meet merchants from the gold-rich south, where Islam and indigenous beliefs dance a delicate tango. Now, let your mind's eye drift eastward, across sun-baked savannas and life-giving rivers. You find yourself in the sprawling markets of Niani, jewel of the Mali Empire. Here, beneath the watchful gaze of the royal palace, a tapestry of languages fills the air. Mandinka, Arabic, and a dozen other tongues blend in a cacophony of commerce and culture. Gold dust changes hands, measured carefully on delicate scales. Manuscripts, their pages filled with poetry and astronomical calculations, are traded alongside shimmering silks and pungent spices. But empires are more than their riches. They're built on the backs of farmers tilling rich floodplains, sustained by the songs of griots keeping oral histories alive, defended by armies that march to the beat of talking drums. In the quiet corners of grand mosques and the hidden shrines of animist traditions, you will find the true heart of these realms. A complex interplay of belief systems that shaped everything from law to art, from the gold mines of Bambuk to the salt pans of Tagaza, from the libraries of Timbuktu to the ports of the Swahili coast. This isn't just a recitation of names and dates. It's an exploration of how empires rose, flourished, and ultimately faded, leaving legacies that continue to shape our world today. We'll uncover the diplomatic genius of Sundiata Keita, founder of Mali, who united warring clans into a powerhouse that dominated West Africa for centuries. We'll walk in the footsteps of Mansa Musa, whose legendary pilgrimage to Mecca put Mali on the world map and flooded Cairo's economy with gold. And we'll witness the rise of Soni Oli, the warrior king, who forged the Songhai Empire into a force that would challenge even the might of Morocco. But great empires cast long shadows. We'll also explore the darker sides of these realms. The slave trade that fueled economies, the wars of conquest that redrew maps, and the internal struggles that would ultimately lead to their downfall. Through it all, we'll see how the legacy of these empires continues to resonate, from the linguistic landscape of modern West Africa to the treasured artifacts in museums around the world. This is a journey through time and space, where myth and history blur, where great deeds echo across centuries, and where the roots of our modern world sink deep into African soil. You're now under the baobab skies, and the story of empires begins now. In the heart of West Africa, where the Sahel meets the savannah, a civilization thrived on the delicate balance of power, tradition, and artistry. The Hausa city-states were more than just kingdoms. They were intricate machines, powered by an ecosystem of castes, titles, and obligations. And within this complex lattice of society, the goldsmith stood at a curious intersection. Respected, yet watched. Necessary, but never fully trusted. By the end of this segment, you'll understand why goldsmithing in Houseland demanded more than just talent. It required trust, bloodline, and a constant negotiation with power itself. Imagine, if you will, the interior of a medieval Hausa workshop at dawn. A narrow clay room, its walls etched with the patina of countless fires. The forge glows red, casting long shadows across the packed earth floor. A teenage apprentice fans the flames, his eyes fixed on the older goldsmith who hammers an intricate design into a golden bracelet. The air is thick with the scent of hot metal and anticipation. In many Hausa societies, crafting professions like goldsmithing were not chosen. They were inherited, passed down bloodlines like secret spells, the knowledge of which alloy sang best under the hammer, which design would catch a noble's eye, and which ritual to whisper before pouring molten gold into a mold. All of this was oral inheritance, a legacy as precious as the metal itself. A boy could not simply choose to become a goldsmith. He had to be born into it, his destiny etched in the calluses on his father's hands and the glint in his grandfather's eye. This birthright came with both privilege and chains, for to be a goldsmith was to walk a tightrope between artistry and politics. Gold was power, yes, but power attracts paranoia like moths to flame. The emir's courts often held goldsmiths close, yet at a distance. They were summoned for royal commissions, marriage gifts, and sacred ornaments, their skills essential to the display of wealth and status. But rarely were they allowed too close to the inner circles of decision-making. Their skill was feared, because a man who could shape gold could also shape symbols. And in a world where symbols held sway over hearts and minds, this made them dangerous. To be a goldsmith meant more than mastering tools. It meant mastering diplomacy. You needed to remember which client had paid in full, which royal cousin expected a favor, which imam disapproved of your trade but still came to you in secret for a gift for his newest wife. You needed to keep records in your mind, because writing them down could get you accused of betrayal. Every interaction was a dance, every commission a negotiation, not just of price, but of loyalty and discretion. And then there were the guilds, tight networks of artisans who policed their own, trained their young, and negotiated prices with the market elite. These weren't mere trade associations. They were the invisible threads that held the fabric of commerce together. Step out of line, and you didn't just lose business. You lost your lineage's reputation, built over generations. Or worse, your right to work at all, leaving you adrift in a society where your craft was your identity. Picture a bustling medieval Kano marketplace. Women in colorful wrappers haggle over spices, their voices a melody above the general din. Nobles with elaborate turbans stride purposefully, retinues in tow. Merchants call out their wares. Silks from the east, kola nuts from the south. And there, in a shadowed corner, a goldsmith discreetly hands over a finely crafted pendant to a veiled noblewoman. The exchange is quick, almost invisible to the untrained eye. But in that moment, power shifts, alliances are cemented, and the delicate balance of the city-state is maintained. In Hausa cosmology, gold wasn't just a metal. It was alive. Certain pieces required purification rites before they could be worn, lest they bring misfortune to their owners. Some goldsmiths whispered prayers into the metal as they worked, infusing each creation with blessings and protection. Others refused to work at certain times of the month, when the spirits were restless and the gold might not bend to their will. These weren't mere superstitions. They were survival strategies, ways of navigating a world where the physical and spiritual realms intertwined. A goldsmith who ignored these practices risked not just his reputation, but his very soul. Gold carried the weight of expectations heavier than the metal itself. It had to impress, but not outshine its wearer. It had to speak of status, but not arrogance. A piece too loud could cost a patron his reputation, marking him as nouveau, rich, or worse. A pretender to station he didn't deserve. A piece too weak could get the goldsmith publicly shamed. His work derided in the marketplace, his commissions drying up like water in the Harmattan winds. Or worse, beaten for disappointing a powerful client, banished from the city for breaking guild rules. Or cursed by a rival who whispered to the spirits that this goldsmith's hands had grown too proud. Consider a ceremonial Hausa dagger, its hilt adorned with golden filigree so fine it seems to float above the metal. It rests on a folded cloth of deep indigo, the color of nobility and wealth. In the background, firelight flickers, casting the piece in an ever-shifting glow. This dagger is more than a weapon. It's a statement, a piece of political theater sharp enough to draw blood in more ways than one. The goldsmith who created it poured not just his skill into the work, but his hopes, his fears, his understanding of the complex web of alliances and enmities that defined the court. One wrong curve in the filigree, one symbol misplaced, and the dagger could become an insult rather than an honor. The goldsmith's reputation, and perhaps his life, hung on the edge of that blade as surely as if he were the one wielding it in battle. This was the world of the Hausa goldsmith, a world where every tap of the hammer echoed through the halls of power, where every pore of molten metal could solidify alliances or melt them away. It was a craft that demanded more than just steady hands and a keen eye. It required a politician's instinct, a priest's understanding of the sacred, and a gambler's nerve. For in Houseland, gold was more than decoration. It was the physical manifestation of power, of divine favor, of the intricate bonds that held society together. And those who shaped it walked a path as narrow and perilous as the finest wire they drew. To be a goldsmith in this world was to be both exalted and constrained, essential yet expendable. It was to hold in your hands the power to create beauty that could move hearts and change fortunes. All while knowing that same power could in an instant become the chains that bound you. This was the legacy passed down through generations, whispered from father to son, from master to apprentice. The true gold of their craft wasn't in the metal they shaped, but in the wisdom required to navigate this glittering, dangerous world. A wisdom as carefully guarded as any royal treasury, and far more valuable. For, in the end, the greatest creations of the Hausa goldsmiths weren't the pieces that adorned nobles or graced sacred shrines. It was the intricate, invisible network of relationships, traditions, and unspoken rules that allowed them to practice their art in a world where beauty and danger were two sides of the same gleaming coin. In the heart of medieval FA, the bronze foundry was more than a workplace, which was a sacred chamber where art, religion, and community fused under the weight of ritual. A place where even silence had meaning. The apprentices who stepped into this world did not simply learn how to shape metal. They were inducted into a spiritual order. Before they were allowed to even touch the wax models or stir the coals, they fasted, sometimes for days. They purified their bodies in sacred rivers, and they listened, watched, waited, because every movement in the foundry was choreographed by belief. The young initiates, their eyes wide with anticipation and reverence, knelt by the banks of the ocean river. The cool water lapped at their hands as they performed the ritual cleansing. Behind them, the low rhythmic chants of the elder artisans rose and fell like the mist that clung to the forest clearing. This was no mere washing, it was a baptism into an ancient tradition, a rite of passage that would transform them from novices into vessels of divine creativity. As the sun's first rays pierced the canopy, the apprentices rose, their bodies and spirits purified, ready to enter the sacred space of the foundry. They knew that beyond those walls lay not just lessons in metalcraft, but a journey into the very heart of Yoruba spirituality. The pouring of molten metal wasn't done casually, it was timed with prayers. Some elders spoke to Ogun, the god of iron, before lighting the forge. Others placed carved charms beneath the furnace. And during the most sacred casting sessions, an eerie hush fell across the space. No jokes, no songs, no talking. The metal, they believed, could hear. Inside the foundry, time seemed to slow. The air was thick with the scent of heated metal and burning charcoal. Master craftsmen moved with deliberate grace, their every action a silent prayer to the gods who guided their hands. An apprentice, barely more than a boy, watched in awe as an elder artisan approached the furnace. The old man's lips moved in soundless supplication to Ogun, his calloused hands cradling a small wooden figure, a charm imbued with centuries of belief and power. With reverence, the elder lowered the charm beside the smoldering furnace. Sweat beaded on his brow, not just from the heat, but from the weight of tradition and expectation that rested upon his shoulders. In that moment, he was not just a craftsman, but a conduit between the physical world and the realm of the spirits. A single mistake, a single ill-timed word, might anger the spirits or ruin the peace. And if that happened, no one blamed luck, they blamed disrespect. The apprentices held their breath, understanding that even the slightest whisper could disrupt the delicate balance between the seen and unseen worlds. They had heard the stories of castings gone wrong, of beautiful works shattered by careless words or thoughts. In Ife, failure in the foundry was more than a waste of materials. It was a spiritual transgression, a sign that one had failed to honor the gods and ancestors who guided their craft. You see, in Ife, the bronze head was not just sculpture, it was a vessel, a container for memory, for ancestors, for kingship, and to treat it like ordinary metalwork was to miss the point entirely. As the molten bronze was carefully poured into the mold, the foundry fell into an even deeper silence. The metal flowed like liquid fire, carrying with it the hopes and prayers of the entire community. Each bronze head created here was more than an artistic achievement, it was a bridge between the living and the dead, a physical manifestation of the divine right of kings, a testament to the enduring power of Yoruba culture. The apprentices watched, transfixed, as the glowing metal filled every crevice of the mold. They understood that they were witnessing more than the birth of an object, they were participating in the creation of something sacred. something that would connect generations past and future. Inside those walls, fire was alive. Smoke was prayer. Silence was obedience. And bronze. Bronze was destiny, waiting to be shaped. As the newly cast bronze head cooled, the artisans gathered around it in a circle, seated cross-legged on the earthen floor. The foundry was dim, lit only by the dying embers of the forge and a few flickering oil lamps. In this twilight world, the boundaries between the physical and spiritual realms seemed to blur. The craftsmen bowed their heads in silent communion with the ancestors and gods who had guided their hands. The apprentices, still standing at the edges of the room, felt the weight of history and tradition settle upon their shoulders. They knew that one day it would be their turn to sit in that circle, to shape the destiny of their people through fire and metal. In the hushed aftermath of the casting, the foundry became a sanctuary of reflection. The artisan's silence was not empty, it was filled with unspoken prayers. With gratitude for the knowledge passed down through generations, with hope for the future their work would help to shape. As the first light of dawn began to seep through the cracks in the foundry walls, the spell of silence slowly lifted. The master craftsman rose, his joints creaking with age and wisdom. He approached the cooling bronze head, his eyes filled with a mixture of pride and humility. With gentle hands, he lifted the piece from its mold, cradling it as one might hold a newborn child. The other artisans gathered close, their faces etched with anticipation and reverence. In that moment, they were not just witnessing the unveiling of a work of art. They were present at the birth of a new vessel for the spirit of Ife. The bronze head gleamed in the soft light, its surface still warm to the touch. Every line, every curve, every detail was a testament to the skill and devotion of the craftsman. But more than that, it was a physical manifestation of the invisible threads that connected the people of Ife to their past, their gods, and their future. As the master held the bronze head aloft, a collective sigh of awe rippled through the foundry. The apprentices, who had watched and learned in respectful silence, felt a surge of pride and purpose. They understood now, in a way that went beyond words, the true meaning of their craft. This bronze head would soon take its place in the palace, a symbol of royal authority and divine blessing. It would stand as a silent witness to the ebb and flow of Ife's history, a constant reminder of the enduring power of art and belief. But for now, in the sacred space of the foundry, it was a moment of triumph and reflection. The artisans allowed themselves small smiles of satisfaction, knowing they had once again successfully bridged the gap between the mundane and the divine. As the day began in earnest outside the foundry walls, the craftsmen and apprentices prepared to return to their daily lives. But they carried with them the knowledge that they were part of something greater, living tradition that stretched back through the centuries and would continue long after they were gone. The bronze head, now cooling on a bed of sand, was more than a masterpiece of metalwork. It was a testament to the enduring spirit of Ife, a culture that understood the profound connection between art, spirituality, and identity. In its gleaming surface, one could see reflected the faces of ancestors, the wisdom of elders, and the promise of future generations. As the foundry doors opened to the bright Ife morning, the apprentices stepped out, changed. They had entered as students of craft and emerged as guardians of a sacred tradition. The rituals of fire and silence had transformed them, just as surely as they had transformed raw metal into a vessel of memory and power. In the streets of Ife, life went on, markets bustled, children played, and the rhythms of daily existence pulsed through the city. But within the hearts of those who had witnessed the night's casting, a deeper rhythm beat. They carried with them the secret knowledge of fire and metal, of silence and spirit. And in the quiet corners of their minds, they could still hear the whisper of molten bronze, the silent prayers of master craftsmen, and the timeless voice of Ife itself, speaking through the ages in a language of art and belief that would never be silenced. By the end of this part, you'll understand why the greatest fear in the bronze foundry wasn't failure, was judgment. Not by kings or clients, but by forces far older, spirits, ancestors, invisible eyes in the smoke. When a bronze head emerged from the fiery crucible, its journey had only just begun. For in the world of Yoruba artisans, creation was not complete until it had been blessed by forces beyond mortal comprehension. The gleaming metal, still warm from the forge, held within it a potential spark of the divine, waiting to be awakened. But first, secrecy. The newly cast piece was hidden away, wrapped carefully in pristine white cloth. Not a soul outside the inner circle of craftsmen was permitted to gaze upon it. Even the families of those who had labored over its creation were kept at arm's length. This wasn't mere superstition or artistic pride. No, it was a matter of spiritual protection. In Yoruba belief, to reveal a sacred object prematurely was to invite disaster. The ace, that vital essence, that power that breathed life into metal and stone, was vulnerable in these early moments. Jealous eyes, covetous hearts, or malevolent spirits could sap its strength or twist its purpose. And so, the bronze head rested in darkness, surrounded by symbols of purity and protection. Imagine, if you will, a small, dimly lit room. At its center, a woven mat spread upon the earthen floor. Upon this humble altar, the shrouded form of the bronze head rests, encircling it a constellation of sacred items. Bright white kola nuts, their flesh bitter but revered. Intricate patterns drawn in chalk, spiraling outwards like whispered prayers made visible, and standing sentinel, small carved figurines, ancestors and spirits keeping watch over this moment of transition. But cloth and chalk alone were not enough to bridge the gap between the physical and the spiritual. For that, a different kind of artisan was needed. Enter the diviner. This was no ordinary village elder, no simple keeper of traditions. The diviner was a living conduit, trained in the ancient ways of their eyes, saw beyond the veil of the mundane, their ears attuned to whispers from realms unseen. With weathered hands, they would manipulate sacred tools, palm nuts worn smooth by generations of use, bones etched with cryptic symbols, shells that held the echoes of distant shores. As twilight deepened outside, the diviner would take their place before the shrouded bronze. Silence fell, broken only by the soft clink of divination tools and the diviner's measured breathing. They would speak to the object, not with words meant for mortal ears, but in the language of spirit. Lots would be cast, patterns read in the fall of nuts or the alignment of bones. And then ... listening. But what were they listening for? What message could cold metal and sacred symbols convey? The answer was both simple and profound. Approval. For in this moment, it was not the skill of the craftsmen being judged, nor the beauty of the form they had created. No, this was a question far more weighty. Had the ancestors, those watchful guardians of tradition and culture, accepted this new creation into their ranks? Did the fierce spirit of Ogun, god of metal and craft, rest easy within the curves and planes of the bronze? Was there harmony between the physical form and the spiritual essence it was meant to embody? Or ... had something gone terribly wrong? Did the object carry within it a seed of discord, a spark of divine anger forged unwittingly into the shape of beauty? The consequences of such a misstep could be dire, not just for the artisans, but for the entire community. If the diviner's face grew grave, If the lots fell in ominous patterns, the fate of the bronze head could be sealed before it ever saw the light of day. It might be buried deep in the earth, returning to the embrace of the very soil from which its ore had been mined. In more extreme cases, it could be shattered, its fragments scattered to the four winds to disperse any lingering malevolence, or, in a final act of transformation, it might be consigned once more to the flames, melted down to begin the journey anew. Picture the tension of this moment. The air thick with incense smoke, twisting in ethereal patterns that seemed to form faces in the gloom. Elders gathered in a tight circle, their weathered faces etched with lines of concentration and concern. At the center, the diviner, swaying slightly as they cast palm kernels onto a intricately carved wooden tray. Each bounce and roll of the sacred nuts carried the weight of divine judgment. But if the spirits smiled upon the creation, if the diviner's eyes lit with the fire of divine approval, then a wave of relief would wash through the gathered artisans. Only then, with the blessing of the unseen world secured, could the true unveiling begin. The white cloth would be removed with reverence, each fold carefully drawn back to reveal the gleaming bronze beneath. As if summoned by the glint of metal in firelight, the village would begin to gather. The air would fill with the thrumming of drums, the sweet notes of flutes, the rattle of gourds filled with sacred seeds. Dancers would emerge from the shadows, their movements fluid and hypnotic, echoing the very flames that had given birth to the bronze. With great ceremony, the head would be lifted high. Perhaps it was destined for a place of honor in a royal court, a symbol of the ruler's connection to the divine. Or it might find its home upon a sacred shrine, a focal point for worship and offerings. In some cases, the bronze head would be paraded through the streets, held aloft for all to see, living proof that the ancestors still walked among their descendants, that the old ways remained strong. And every hand that had touched that piece in its journey from or to art, from the miners who had extracted the raw materials from the earth, to the smelters who had coaxed liquid metal from unyielding rock, to the sculptors who had shaped it with skill and vision, all of them knew a profound truth. They had not simply created an object of beauty or status. No, their work had forged something far more significant. They had built a bridge between the tangible world of metal and clay and the intangible realm of meaning and spirit. A bridge between the silence of inanimate matter and the whispered wisdom of ancestors. A bridge between the present moment, with all its mundane concerns, and the timeless flow of tradition that stretched back into the mists of history. As the newly unveiled bronze head caught the light of dawn, its surface seeming to shimmer with an inner radiance, one could almost feel the presence of countless generations gathered to witness this moment. The air vibrated with more than just the beat of drums and the chants of worshippers. It thrummed with the weight of history, with the approval of spirits, with the connection between the seen and unseen worlds. And there, at the heart of it all, gleaming in the center of a makeshift shrine, stood the bronze head. Candles flickered around its base, their light dancing across the intricate details of its surface. Drums pulsed a heartbeat rhythm, echoing the pulse of life that now seemed to animate the metal. Worshippers swayed in reverent ecstasy, their movements a physical prayer of gratitude and awe. In that moment, as human hands reached out to touch the cool surface of the bronze, as lips murmured ancient blessings, as eyes gazed upon the face that seemed to hold all the wisdom of the ages, in that moment, the veil between worlds grew thin. The bronze head was no longer simply an object. It had become a vessel, a point of connection, a sacred intermediary between the realm of mortals and the vast, unknowable world of the spirits. And so, the journey of the bronze head reached its culmination. Born of fire, judged by the unseen, and now embraced by the community, it took its place in the intricate tapestry of Yoruba spiritual and artistic tradition. A testament to the skill of its creators. Yes, but more than that, a living link in an unbroken chain of belief and practice that stretched back through the centuries and would continue on into the unknowable future. We leave the silent, smoky courtyards of Ife and journey northwest to the imperial courts of Benin. Here, the bronze craft became louder, bolder, more political. In Benin, kings were called obus, and they didn't just wear bronze, they were surrounded by it. Pillars, plaques, masks, and altars all told stories in sculpted metal. Their palaces were museums of domination. And unlike Ife's spiritual quiet, Benin bronze was a public language of propaganda. Imagine, if you will, a reconstructed royal Benin court. Gleaming bronze plaques mounted on red earthen walls, each showing warriors, dignitaries, and the Orba himself. The scene unfolds in black and white, a testament to the timeless power of these metallic narratives. Each bronze plaque was a power statement. Soldiers marching in rigid formation, their spears catching the light, court scenes unfolding, frozen in time, depicting the intricate dance of politics and ritual. And there, at the center of it all, the Orba sitting on a throne so stiff and still he seemed beyond human. These were history books without paper, cast in fire and kept for eternity. And behind every piece was a guild. Not just any guild, but a tightly controlled, hereditary institution that shaped the very fabric of Benin society. Bronze casting in Benin was a privilege passed down through generations. You couldn't just decide to be a caster on a whim. No, this was a birthright, as intrinsic to certain families as the color of their eyes or the curve of their smile. But this wasn't just art for art's sake. The guild didn't serve the people. It served the Orba alone. This singular focus kept bronze intensely political. Every curve, every line, every figure cast in metal was a statement of royal will and power. Imagine the weight of that responsibility. If you angered the king, you didn't just lose favor. Your family could lose access to the guild. You lost your fire, your livelihood. Generations of skill and knowledge could be snuffed out in an instant, all because of a misplaced word or an ill-timed gesture. But if the king favored you, then your work was eternal. Your creations would adorn the palace walls for centuries, telling the story of Benin's greatness long after you were gone. It was a delicate balance, a dance between artistry and politics that shaped the very soul of the kingdom. Picture a bronze caster in the Benin Guild, his face etched with concentration, presenting a completed plaque to the Oba's court. Heads are bowed in reverence, musicians frozen mid-note, their instruments caught in a moment of suspended animation. The scene unfolds in stark black and white, emphasizing the timeless nature of this ritual. It was a system of reward and reverence. A world where metal shaped memory and memory shaped power, unlike the quieter, ancestor-focused bronzes of Ife. Benin bronzers shouted, "This is what happened. This is who ruled. This is what you should remember." And memory in a land without paper was everything. The Benin bronzes weren't just beautiful objects. They were a living, breathing archive of the kingdom's history. Each plaque, each statue, each intricately carved piece told a story of battles won and enemies vanquished, of trade deals struck and alliances forged, of the Oba's divine right to rule and the unquestioned loyalty of his subjects. These stories weren't whispered in hushed tones or written in fragile scrolls. They were cast in metal, meant to endure for generations. The weight of history, quite literally, hung on the palace walls. Imagine walking through the Oba's palace. your footsteps echoing on smooth earthen floors. Around you, bronze gleams in the flickering torchlight. Each piece catches your eye, demanding attention, insisting that you stop and look and remember. Here, a plaque showing the Orba receiving tribute from foreign emissaries, their strange clothes and unfamiliar features captured in exquisite detail. There, a statue of a warrior, his muscles taut, his spear raised in eternal vigilance. And everywhere, the symbols of royal power, leopards and snakes and birds of prey, their forms twisted and stylized into something both familiar and otherworldly. This wasn't just decoration. It was a carefully curated narrative, a story told in metal and fire. Each piece reinforced the Oba's right to rule, his connection to the divine, his place at the center of the Benin universe. And behind it all, the guild worked tirelessly. Fathers teaching sons, uncles guiding nephews, the secrets of the craft passed down in whispers and gentle corrections. The heat of the forge, the smell of molten metal, the satisfying weight of a finished piece. These were the constants in their lives, as unchanging as the stars above. But the guild wasn't just about preserving tradition. It was also a hotbed of innovation. New techniques were developed, new styles emerged, always pushing the boundaries of what was possible with bronze. Yet every innovation, every new idea, had to be approved by the Orba. The guild's creativity was channeled, focused like a laser beam on glorifying the throne. Imagine the pressure, the knowledge that one mistake, one displeasing piece could mean the end of everything. But also imagine the pride, the knowledge that your work would outlive you, that it would speak to future generations long after your voice had fallen silent. This was the world of the Benin bronze casters, a world where art and politics were inseparable, where beauty and power danced a delicate duet, a world cast in metal, preserved for eternity. As we stand in the reconstructed court, our eyes tracing the intricate details of each plaque, each statue, we're not just looking at art. We're reading a history book written in bronze. We're seeing the face of power, frozen in time. The OBA sitting on his throne, his face an impassive mask of authority. The courtiers, their poses speaking volumes about hierarchy and influence. The warriors, their weapons and armor telling tales of conquest and defense. And through it all, the subtle, ever-present reminders of the OBA's divine right to rule. This wasn't just propaganda. It was a worldview cast in metal, a belief system made tangible. Every curve, every line, every figure was a statement. This is how things are. This is how they have always been. This is how they will always be. But history, as we know, is rarely so simple. The very permanence of bronze, the weight of these metal histories, would eventually become a double-edged sword. For when change came, as it always does, these unchanging metal narratives would find themselves at odds with a shifting world. Yet in this moment, frozen in time, the power of Benin bronze is undeniable. It speaks to us across centuries, a voice cast in metal, telling tales of power and glory, of kings and gods, of a world where art and authority were one and the same. As we leave the reconstructed court, the gleam of bronze still dancing in our eyes, we carry with us a deeper understanding. We've seen how a metal could crown kings, how it could shape memory and define power. We've glimpsed a world where art wasn't just decoration, but the very foundation of authority. And as we step back into our own time, we can't help but wonder, what are our bronzes? What stories do we cast in metal, in pixels, in the ephemeral data of our digital age? What will speak for us when our voices have long fallen silent? The lesson of Benin bronze echoes through time. Those who control the narrative control the future. And sometimes that narrative is cast not in words, but in the enduring weight of metal. Time did not tick in medieval West Africa. It shimmered, it glowed with the red fire of the furnace, and cooled into shapes that spoke across centuries. In a world before wristwatches and wall calendars, the people of Ife and Benin measured time through ritual, season, and sculpture. Bronze, in this case, wasn't just for storytelling. It was a marker of eras. Cap-cut, prompt, visual of a West African bronze shrine, slowly panning over layers of plaques, with date ranges in subtitle overlays. You see, every major reign in Benin was immortalized in bronze. Each Oba had his chapter, not in parchment, but in plaque. One face, one moment, one achievement, each sculpted, cast, and preserved. To study a wall of Benin bronzes was to read a timeline of kingship. This one, Oba Ezugi's military victory. That one, Oba Ovanramwan, receiving envoys. Another, the ritual dance of the annual Igu festival. And here was the genius. By encoding events in stylized details, a spear angled here, a leopard skin there, a pattern in the robe. Bronze casters created a visual language that only trained eyes could fully decipher. Cap-cut prompt, close-ups of repeated iconography in Benin plaques. For example, identical warrior stances, recurring coral necklaces, gesture motifs, with arrows or overlays pointing out the symbols. This meant that bronze didn't just freeze time, it translated it from generation to generation. Elder guild members taught younger ones what each figure meant. The bronze became oral tradition solidified, a language passed from fire to tongue, not just from mouth to ear. In the heart of West Africa, where the sun beat down on red earth and lush forests, time was measured not by the ticking of clocks, but by the rhythms of life and the enduring legacy of bronze. The ancient kingdoms of Ife and Benin, nestled in what is now modern-day Nigeria, developed a unique way of chronicling their history and marking the passage of time. Imagine a world where the concept of hours and minutes held no sway. Instead, the turning of seasons, the cycle of harvests, and the succession of rulers formed the backbone of temporal understanding. In this world, bronze wasn't merely a metal. It was a vessel of memory, a keeper of stories, and a bridge between past and present. The bronze casters of Benin were more than artisans. They were historians, storytellers, and timekeepers, all rolled into one. Their craft was not just about shaping metal, but about shaping the very fabric of their society's collective memory. With each plaque they created, they were not simply decorating palace walls. They were writing chapters in a grand, metallic book of time. Consider the intricacy of their work. A single bronze plaque might depict a battle, a coronation, or a sacred ritual. But within that scene, every detail was carefully chosen and meticulously rendered. The angle of a warrior's spear might indicate the direction of an invasion. The pattern on an Oba's robe could reveal the year of his reign. Even the number of attendants in a royal procession could be a clue to decoding the exact event being portrayed. This visual language was complex and nuanced, requiring years of training to master. Young apprentices would spend countless hours studying under master craftsmen, learning not just the techniques of bronze casting, but the intricate symbolism that imbued each piece with meaning. It was a form of education that went beyond mere skill. It was the passing down of cultural knowledge, historical records, and spiritual beliefs. In Ife, the concept of time took on an even more circular nature. Here, bronze sculptures of ancestors were not static relics, but active participants in the flow of time. During sacred festivals, These bronzes would be lovingly polished and re-anointed, their surfaces gleaming anew, as if freshly cast. This act of renewal was more than mere maintenance. It was a ritual that connected the present to the past, the living to the dead. Capcut prompt, a ritual repolishing of a bronze ancestral head in Ife, surrounded by ceremonial drums and palm leaves. Imagine the scene. Drummers beating out ancient rhythms, palm fronds swaying in the breeze, and in the center, a bronze head catching the light of flickering torches. As the sculpture is anointed with sacred oils, it seems to come alive, the features of a long-dead ancestor sharp and present. In this moment, time loses its linear quality. The past is not gone, but ever present, speaking through metal and ritual to guide the living. This cyclical view of time, embodied in bronze and ceremony, reflects a profound understanding of the interconnectedness of all things. In the worldview of Ife and Benin, the ancestors were not relegated to a distant past, but were active participants in the present. Each year, as the bronzes were renewed, so too was the bond between generations strengthened. The bronze became more than just a record of events. It was a living, breathing part of the community's spiritual and cultural life. Each piece held within it not just the story of its creation, but the accumulated energy of countless rituals, prayers, and offerings made before it over the years. In this way, bronze served as a cultural clock, but one that measured far more than the passing of days or years. It measured the ebb and flow of power, the rise and fall of dynasties, the cycles of spiritual renewal, and the enduring strength of tradition. Each plaque, each sculpture, each carefully crafted piece was a testament to the continuity of culture and the resilience of memory. To truly understand this system of timekeeping, one must set aside modern notions of precise measurement and linear progression. In the world of Efe and Benin, time was not a straight line marching inexorably forward, but a rich tapestry of interconnected moments, each one echoing through the ages. The bronze casters, in their wisdom, understood that true timekeeping was not about marking seconds, but about preserving the essence of experiences. Their art captured not just the facts of history, but its spirit, the triumphs and tragedies, the moments of divine inspiration and human frailty that shaped their world. In a society where written records were rare, this bronze chronicle took on immense importance. It was not just art, not just history, but the very foundation of cultural identity. To study these bronzes was to commune with the ancestors, to draw strength from their wisdom, and to find one's place in the grand narrative of the kingdom. As we gaze upon these ancient bronzes today, we are not merely looking at artifacts from a distant past. We are peering through a window into a different way of understanding time and history. These pieces challenge us to reconsider our own relationship with the past, to question the artificial divisions we create between then and now. In the end, the bronze timekeepers of West Africa remind us that true measurement of time is not about precision, but about meaning. Not about seconds ticking away, but about souls resonating across the ages. In this world, where writing was rare but memory was sacred, bronze became more than a cultural clock. It became a bridge between worlds, a keeper of secrets, and a testament to the enduring power of human creativity and spiritual connection. Not counting seconds, but measuring souls. Before the heat, before the mold, before even the shaping of wax, there were prayers. To cast bronze in medieval West Africa was not just an act of craftsmanship. It was a sacred conversation, a delicate dance between the visible and invisible realms. The guilds of Ife and Benin, especially the bronze casters of Egon Street, belonged to a tightly protected spiritual brotherhood. Their process was not merely technical, but a ritual steeped in invocations, taboos, and unseen boundaries that stretched back through generations. Picture an elderly beanie bronze caster, his weathered hands raised in quiet invocation. He kneels before a small ancestral shrine, adorned with kola, nuts, and palm oil. This moment of reverence is not a mere formality, but the very foundation upon which the entire craft is built. Each step in the bronze casting process began with libation, palm wine poured gently onto the earth. This wasn't an offering to some distant god of fire or craft. No, it was a direct communion with the ancestors of the guild, those who had held the secrets before, those who had walked the path of wax and flame in ages past. Only with their blessing could the work truly begin. The furnace itself, known as Ogjin, was far more than a simple tool. In the eyes of these master craftsmen, it was a living entity, hungry, powerful, and demanding respect. Before the first spark could ignite its belly, the Ogin had to be fed, not with fuel, but with words. Chants in Ido or Yoruba, depending on the city, would rise from the caster's lips. Sometimes, these incantations were mixed with old, secret phrases, words so ancient their meaning was lost to all but the most initiated. "May your flame be steady," they would whisper. "May the spirit of the metal not fight the mold. May the face emerge without cracks." To outsiders, these might sound like poetic hopes or superstitious mumblings. But to the bronze casters, they were insurance against misfortune, a way to align the seen and unseen forces at play in their craft. For if a casting failed, if a statue cracked or a mold burst, it was rarely seen as mere accident. Such mishaps were often interpreted as signs, warnings that something was amiss in the delicate balance between craftsman, ancestor, and material. Perhaps a caster had eaten a forbidden food that day, breaking an age-old taboo. Maybe a no-initiate had unknowingly crossed the threshold of the forge, disturbing the sacred space. Or perhaps, most troubling of all, an unappeased ancestor had been forgotten, their spirit restless and displeased. Imagine a cracked bronze head resting beside an extinguished furnace. In the dim light, soft embers still glow, casting eerie shadows that seem to whisper of failure and spiritual discord. This image would strike fear into the heart of any bronze caster, for it represented not just a loss of materials, but a potential rift in the cosmic order of their craft. Women, too, played crucial roles in these unseen protections, though their work often took place beyond the immediate confines of the forge. Many prepared herbal washes, infusing water with leaves and roots believed to carry spiritual potency. Others would chant or sing soft songs of protection, their voices a barely audible counterpoint to the roar of the furnace. These acts, performed just outside the workspace, were thought to ensure the metal's spiritual harmony, weaving an invisible net of protection around the entire process. In Ife, whispers spoke of guilds that kept sacred seeds or stones buried beneath their workspaces. These were no ordinary tokens, but physical links to the founding spirit of their craft. Before beginning a cast, a bronze master might touch these hidden objects, centering himself and connecting his mortal hands to the timeless power that flowed through his lineage. And so, bronze was never just about metal. It was about memory, a tangible link to ancestors and spirits. It was about respect, acknowledging the power inherent in earth and fire. It was about navigating a world where every element, fire, earth, wax, air, had a spiritual counterpart watching in silence, ready to aid or hinder based on the craftsman's actions and intentions. The bronze heads and figures that emerged from these forges were more than mere objects of art or symbols of power. They were the physical manifestations of an intricate spiritual dialogue. Each curve and line etched not just by human hands, but by the collective will of seen and unseen forces working in harmony. As the molten metal cooled and solidified, taking on the form of kings, queens, or deities, it carried within it the echoes of every prayer whispered, every taboo respected, every ancestral blessing invoked. The finished pieces gleamed not just with the luster of polished bronze, but with the accumulated spiritual energy of an entire tradition. In the quiet of night, when the forges had cooled and the casters retired to their homes, these bronze creations seemed to come alive. Imagine a bronze head, its surface catching the flickering light of a single candle. In its polished eyes, the flame's reflection dances, giving the illusion of consciousness, of a spirit peering out from within the metal itself. This was the true magic of West African bronze casting, not just in the technical mastery required to shape liquid metal into intricate forms, but in the ability to infuse those forms with something more, something that spoke to the deepest parts of the human spirit, bridging the gap between the mundane and the divine. For those who understood the true nature of these bronzes, to stand before them was to feel the weight of history, the presence of ancestors, and the pulse of a living tradition that stretched back through countless generations. Each piece was a testament to the enduring power of craft when wedded to spiritual practice, a reminder that in the hands of true masters, even the most unyielding materials could be shaped into vessels for the sacred. As we gaze upon these bronzes today, separated by centuries and cultural divides, we catch glimpses of that ancient power. In the serene faces of Efe heads or the dynamic poses of Benin warriors, we see not just artistic achievement, but the culmination of a process that was as much about spiritual attunement as it was about metalworking. The legacy of these bronze casters lives on, not just in museums and private collections, but in the enduring mystery that surrounds their creations. For in every gleaming surface and every perfectly cast form, we see the echoes of those ancient prayers, whispered to the fire, carried on the wind, and forever captured in bronze. As the furnace's roar faded to a whisper, and the last embers cooled to ash, a hush fell over the workshop. Skilled hands, calloused from years of devotion to their craft, gently cracked open the mold. With the reverence of a priest polishing a sacred drum, they brushed away the soot, revealing a new face emerging from the bronze. But the question that hung in the air was never simply, what was made? It was, who would be allowed to gaze upon this creation? Whose hands would be deemed worthy to touch it? And what power would this object now wield in the world? In the royal cities of Ife and Benin, these gleaming works of bronze weren't mere objects of admiration. They were living embodiments of history, spirituality, and power. The moment a bronze head or plaque left the hands of its maker, it embarked on a new journey, one governed by intricate court etiquette, ancient ritual lore, and layers of spiritual significance that ran as deep as the roots of the sacred Iroko tree. Picture, if you will, the Obas Palace in Benin, a sprawling labyrinth of courtyards, shrines, and chambers where only the most trusted officials were permitted to tread. Here, bronzes weren't placed carelessly. They were enshrined. Each piece became a vessel through which the spirit of a past king could be honored, consulted, or even, in times of great strife, warned. The idea of touching one of these bronzes carelessly, it was unthinkable. Unless you were a high-ranking member of the Iwibo Guild, those royal stewards trained in the delicate protocols of ancestor veneration. Even allowing your shadow to fall upon such an object could be seen as a grave disrespect. The bronze head wasn't simply an art piece to be admired from afar. It was a bridge between worlds, a conduit for communing with those who had passed beyond the veil. In Ife, the treatment of bronzes was no less sacred, though perhaps less centralized. The exquisite naturalism of their craftsmanship wasn't intended for public consumption. These were treasures hidden away in compounds, carefully wrapped in cloth, or guarded by lineage priests who saw them not as mere objects, but as mirrors of the soul itself. Some bronzes found their resting place beneath the very floors of sacred buildings. Others emerged only during the most hallowed festivals, placed at crossroads where the veil between worlds grew thin. There were even whispers of bronzes that could disappear when danger threatened, spirited away into the depths of the forest by spiritual protectors, only to return when peace once again reigned. But the power of these bronzes extended far beyond their spiritual significance. They spoke a coded language, one that those initiated into the court's mysteries could read as clearly as any written text. A rooster perched atop a figure. This wasn't mere decoration. It was a potent symbol of sacrifice, speaking to the blood and devotion required to maintain the delicate balance between the mortal and spirit realms. An arched eyebrow on a bronze face wasn't simply an aesthetic choice. It reflected divine wisdom, hinting at the secrets and knowledge possessed by those who had passed beyond. And the sleek, powerful form of a leopard. This was no mere artistic flourish. It served as a warning, clear as any spoken word. This object belongs to royal blood. To touch it, to even gaze upon it without proper authority, was to risk the wrath of both earthly and spiritual powers. So, when a visitor entered the court, whether a foreign dignitary or a local noble, every bronze they encountered was engaged in a silent dialogue. These weren't just beautiful objects to be admired. They were speaking of power, of lineage, of the intricate web of relationships between the living and the dead. Imagine, for a moment, a nighttime scene within the palace walls. Torchlight flickers, casting dancing shadows across weathered clay walls. A noble figure pauses before a bronze plaque, their eyes reflecting the firelight. And in that moment of stillness, if one listens closely, the faintest whispers of ancestors might be heard on the night air. A reminder that in this world of bronze and spirit, nothing is ever truly silent. But the influence of these bronzes extended far beyond the confines of palace walls. They became integral to the delicate art of diplomacy, their power recognized even by those who may not have fully grasped the depth of their spiritual significance. A king might choose to gift a bronze piece to a loyal vassal, but this wasn't simply an exchange of art or wealth. It was a spiritual loan, a binding of loyalties that transcended the mortal realm. The object now tied the vassal's fate not just to the living king, but to the long line of royal ancestors. It ensured allegiance not only in the world of politics and earthly power, but in the realm beyond death itself. To truly understand the bronzes of Ife and Benin, we must see them not as static objects, but as living entities with their own journeys and destinies. They weren't simply made, they were activated, infused with spiritual power through intricate rituals and centuries of belief. They were enthroned, placed in positions of honor and reverence, their very presence a testament to the enduring power of kingship and ancestry, and they were protected. For, as word spread of their beauty and the power they held, the outside world began to take notice. When the drums of war echoed on the horizon, these treasured bronzes had to be hidden away, secreted into places known only to a trusted few. The story of these bronzes is one of creation and concealment, of power both seen and unseen. It's a tale that speaks to the enduring strength of tradition, the deep connections between art and spirituality, and the lengths to which a people will go to protect that which they hold most sacred. As we delve deeper into the world of West African bronzes, we begin to understand that these weren't just objects to be admired from behind museum glass. They were, and in many ways still are, living embodiments of history, spirituality, and the complex relationships between the seen and unseen worlds. Each gleaming face, each intricately carved plaque, tells a story far richer than its surface beauty might suggest. They speak of kings and ancestors, of rituals and beliefs that have endured for centuries. They remind us that true power often lies not in what can be touched, but in what can be felt. The weight of history, the whispers of those who came before, and the enduring strength of a culture that refused to let its treasures be forgotten. As we close this chapter of our journey, we're left with a profound sense of the responsibility that comes with creating, guarding, and understanding these bronzes. They are more than art. They are more than history. They are bridges between worlds, silent storytellers that continue to speak to those who know how to listen. In the heart of the Hausa city-states, festivals were more than mere entertainment. They were contracts, rituals of renewal, and coded gatherings of the old professions. Among these, none held more significance for a goldsmith than the Feast of Fire, a midsummer celebration where elemental spirits were honored and the secrets of the forge were renewed in symbolic form. The Feast of Fire was held on the third night after the solstice. As darkness fell, sacred pits across the city came alive with flickering flames. Every artisan's guild, from the leather workers to the dyers, sent representatives adorned in full ceremonial attire. But it was the goldsmiths who commanded the most attention. They arrived last, moving in silent procession, carrying unlit torches. Their faces were hidden behind intricate masks, and they held their tools upright like scepters of ancient kings. An unspoken rule forbade anyone from addressing them. Their entrance marked the climax of the festival and revealed its true purpose. Under the cover of night, the masked goldsmiths would retreat to the oldest smithy in the city. This circular mud brick chamber, known only as Casa Dawuta, earth and fire in the Hausa tongue, was shrouded in mystery. By the strict laws of the guild, only master smiths and their first apprentices were permitted to cross its threshold. Inside this sacred space, they would reenact the origin tale of the first goldsmith, a mythical figure said to have stolen flame from the very heavens themselves. But this was far more than a simple performance. It was during this reenactment that the fate of the coming year was decided. Whispered conversations determined who among the guild would be promoted, who would face rigorous tests of skill, and which closely guarded alloys would be taught to the worthy. Ancient recipes passed down through generations were shared in hushed tones. Solemn rituals bound the participants in oaths of silence, their words sealed by the crackling of the sacred fire. Sometimes, these clandestine gatherings took on a more somber tone. Disciplinary actions were discussed against smiths who had broken the sacred code, those who had married outsiders, sold their craft to foreign lands, or failed to maintain the delicate spiritual balance required of their art. The weight of tradition hung heavy in the air, as thick as the smoke from the forge. Within the walls of Casa Dawuta, the spiritual nature of gold was affirmed anew. For the Hausa, gold was not merely a metal to be shaped and adorned. It was raw, cashy divine residue left behind by the gods. According to their beliefs, gold slumbered beneath the earth for centuries, absorbing the spiritual energy of the ancestors buried in the soil above. When a smith melted gold, he was not simply working with metal. He was awakening the spirit of an entire lineage. This sacred connection came with grave responsibility. Mishandling the gold could curse a client or misalign the smith's own color life force. It was for this reason that even in times of war or devastating drought, a goldsmith's forge was inviolable. To break into the sacred chamber was to invite fire into your family line, a curse that would burn for generations to come. Outside the walls of Casa Dawuta, the festival raged on in a cacophony of life and celebration. Drums echoed through the night like the heartbeats of ancient giants. Children, their faces painted with symbols of the trades, reenacted the work of their elders in miniature. Women moved through the crowds, offering kola nuts and tender goat meat as offerings to the watchful ancestors. But inside the sacred forge, a different kind of magic unfolded. The master smiths and their chosen apprentices stood before the ancient fire, each offering silent prayers. They besieged the spirits to bless their hammers in the year to come, to guide their hands in creating beauty, and to protect their souls from the dangers that came with wielding such powerful magic. As the night wore on, the contrasts between the inner sanctum and the outer revelry grew ever starker. Outside, laughter and song filled the air. Inside, only the whisper of ancient secrets and the steady rhythm of the bellows could be heard. It was a reminder of the dual nature of their craft, both a joyous art and a solemn duty. The Feast of Fire was more than a simple gathering of artisans. It was a testament to the enduring power of tradition, a bridge between the physical and spiritual realms. For centuries, this silent council of goldsmiths shaped far more than just jewelry. They were the keepers of belief, passing secrets through the purifying flames of their forges. With every ritual performed and every oath sworn, they ensured that the golden past of the Hausa people was never completely buried beneath the sands of time. As dawn approached, the goldsmiths would emerge from Casa Dawuta, their faces still hidden behind masks, but their eyes alight with renewed purpose. They carried with them not just the knowledge of their craft, but the weight of their people's history and the responsibility for its future. The festival would soon come to an end, but the impact of what transpired within those mud brick walls would ripple out across the coming year. In the days and weeks that followed, keen observers might notice subtle changes. A previously struggling apprentice might suddenly show remarkable skill with a particular technique. A master smith, known for his traditional designs, might introduce a revolutionary new style. And occasionally, a respected member of the guild might vanish without explanation. The price paid for breaking sacred oaths, the Feast of Fire, remained a mystery to those outside the Goldsmiths' Guild. Its true significance was known only to those who had felt the heat of the sacred forge and heard the whispers of ancient spirits in the dancing flames. But its influence could be seen in every piece of gold that adorned the people of the Hausa city's state siege necklace. Ring and ornament, a small piece of divine fire, shaped by hands guided by centuries of tradition. As the years passed and empires rose and fell, the Feast of Fire endured. It adapted to changing times, absorbing new influences while never losing sight of its core purpose. In this way, the goldsmiths of the Hausa ensured that their art remained not just a craft, but a living connection to the spiritual world that had shaped their people since time immemorial. You may never read about the Feast of Fire in history books or see it mentioned in museums. But for those who know where to look, its legacy lives on in every glint of gold, in every whispered legend, and in the unbroken line of master craftsmen who still gather in secret to honor the ancient pact between human hands and divine fire. As the sun dips below the horizon, casting long shadows across the once bustling palm groves of Nigeria, we find ourselves at the twilight of an era. The palm oil boom, A force that reshaped economies and redefined empires now faces its final season. Like the ebb and flow of the tides, history never remains static, and the wheel of time turns relentlessly onward. The 20th century looms on the horizon, bringing with it winds of change that will sweep across the land. Technologies advance at a dizzying pace, tastes shift like sand in the desert, and colonial powers tighten their grip with ever darker intentions. Nigeria's plantations, once the pride of indigenous growers and the domain of palm wine philosophers, begin to fade from prominence, their glory dimming like the last embers of a dying fire. European traders, their appetites for profit insatiable, and their patience with traditional methods wearing thin, set their sights on new horizons. The wild harvests that sustained generations give way to imported crops: rubber, cocoa, and cotton. These newcomers promise quick returns and easier control, but at what cost? The palm oil markets, once robust and thriving, begin to falter under this new pressure. Prices plummet like ripe fruit from neglected trees, and the red gold that once flowed like rivers now trickles uncertainly through the economy. In the east, a new threat emerges. Southeast Asia, where colonial powers wield tighter control over both land and labor, outpaces West Africa's small-scale producers. What was once a gold mine of opportunity becomes a ghost market, haunted by memories of better days and echoes of lost fortunes. Villages that had known prosperity for generations through the blessing of palm oil now face uncertain futures. The impact ripples through communities like a stone cast into still water. Children, once destined for education and advancement, find themselves pulled from classrooms to toil in struggling farms. Their small hands, which should be holding pencils and books, now grasp at withering palm fronds in a desperate attempt to revive family fortunes. Elders, their eyes clouded with both cataracts and sorrow, watch silently as the young abandon their ancestral lands. Sons and daughters, carrying little more than hope and determination, set out for bustling cities like Lagos, Kano, or even distant Accra. They seek something more stable, a new foundation upon which to build their dreams, leaving behind the fading promise of palm oil prosperity. The once lively bartering hubs, where the air once rang with the shouts of traders and the clinking of coins, grow quieter with each passing season. Barrels still roll along worn paths, but now they move with less urgency. Their contents no longer commanding the respect and value of years past. The rhythm of commerce slows, like a heartbeat growing faint. Picture, if you will, a quiet, overgrown path where a once busy trade route used to run. Weeds push through cracked earth, nature reclaiming what man has neglected. An abandoned palm oil press stands as a silent sentinel, its metal frame now embraced by creeping moss and vines. Nearby, a wrinkled elder sits motionless, her gaze fixed upon a faded portrait. The image, yellowed with age, shows a young woman standing proud amidst a thriving plantation. In her eyes, we see the weight of years and the bittersweet ache of nostalgia. Yet, in this silence, in this apparent decline, a resilience burns quietly but fiercely. Women, the unsung heroes of countless villages, refuse to let the flame of tradition die out. With calloused hands and unwavering spirits, they preserve the techniques passed down through generations. They become the keepers of stories, the guardians of a heritage that refuses to be forgotten. Small batch production continues in humble kitchens and backyard groves, a defiant whisper against the roar of changing times. Palm oil, though no longer the lifeblood of empires, finds its way back to the hands of those who first understood its power. It returns to its roots, nourishing homes, blessing ceremonies, and keeping memory alive. The red oil no longer flows in great barrels to distant shores, but it still glistens in bowls at wedding feasts, still anoints the skin of newborns in age-old blessings. Imagine a close-up of weathered hands, steady despite the years etched upon them, straining fresh palm oil into a ceremonial bowl. The rich, red liquid catches the light, a reminder of the vitality it still holds. Nearby, a child gently rubs palm oil onto a younger sibling's skin, continuing a tradition of protection and blessing that spans centuries. In a small shrine tucked away from prying eyes, candles flicker, their flames fed by the same oil that once lit the way for traders and explorers. In the shadows cast by capitalism's grand collapse, a quiet dignity survives. The palm oil industry may have lost its global dominance, but it has found a new purpose, one rooted in culture, tradition, and the unbreakable bonds of community. The story of palm oil becomes a whispered legend, passed from grandmother to grandchild, a tale of both glory and humility. As night falls on this era, we're reminded that endings often hold the seeds of new beginnings. The palm groves may no longer stretch as far as the eye can see, but in small gardens and hidden groves, new saplings take root. They grow slowly, patiently, much like the resilience of the people who tend them. The final season of the palm oil boom teaches us a profound lesson about the nature of progress and the importance of remembering our roots. It speaks to the strength found in adaptation, in holding on to what matters most even as the world shifts around us. As we close this chapter, we honor those who weathered the storm, who kept the essence of their culture alive when all seemed lost. In the quiet of the night, as the last echoes of the boom fade away, listen closely. You might hear the soft rustle of palm fronds in the breeze, whispering stories of a past glory and promises of future resilience. For in Nigeria, as in life itself, the end of one season merely heralds the beginning of another. The palm oil may no longer rule empires, but it continues to reign in the hearts and homes of those who understand its true value. And so, as we stand at the threshold of a new century, we look back with respect and forward with hope. The legacy of palm oil, like the spirit of Nigeria itself, endures, changed, perhaps, but unbroken. In the face of adversity, in the quiet corners where tradition still thrives, we find the truest measure of a people's strength. It is here, in the persistence of culture and the resilience of spirit, that the real treasure of Nigeria's palm oil story continues to shine, bright as the red gold itself. Beneath the polished surfaces of the Ife heads lies not only artistic beauty, but a profound silencer, silence shaped by lost methods, stolen tools, and broken lines of mentorship. For all the awe they inspire, the truth is chilling. We do not know exactly how the Ife bronzes were made. In the heart of ancient Yorubaland, a sacred art form flourished, one that would leave the world in awe for centuries to come. The bronze casters of Ife were masters of their craft, wielding fire and metal with a precision that seemed to breathe life into cold alloys. Their creations, the famed Ife heads, stand as testament to a skill so refined it bordered on the divine. The art of bronze casting in Ife followed the lost wax method, an ancient technique where a wax model is covered in clay, then heated so the wax melts out and molten metal is poured in. This technique was used around the world, from Mesopotamia to India, but what set Ife apart was the precision. Their bronzes captured the curve of an eyelid, the weight of braided hair, the individuality of a human soul. No other culture used the method with such realism at that time. Imagine, if you will, the hands of a master craftsman, weathered by years of toil, gently guiding those of a young apprentice. The flickering light of the forge casts dancing shadows on the walls of the workshop, a sacred space where metal and spirit intertwine. Here, in the quiet hours before dawn, secrets are whispered, techniques honed over generations are passed down, and the very essence of Ife culture is preserved in molten form. And yet, for all this skill, the knowledge chain was shattered. When colonizers invaded, they did not simply take statues, they disrupted entire artisan guilds. Bronze casting in Ife was a sacred art, passed down from master to apprentice in closely guarded circles. These circles were often linked to royal patronage, spiritual rituals, and ancestral knowledge. With the fall of the political systems that supported them, the guilds faded. Fade-in of an elder craftsman teaching a young boy under the glow of a firelit forge dissolved to colonial officials locking temple doors and closing guild houses. The scene shifts, and we witness the unraveling of centuries of tradition. Colonial boots march through sacred spaces, hands that know nothing of the delicate balance between earth and fire pry open doors meant to remain closed. The rhythmic chant of master and apprentice is silenced, replaced by the harsh clang of locks and the rustling of papers declaring new ownership over ancient lands. Unlike European sculptors who left behind notebooks, treatises, and training schools, the bronze artists of Ife left few written records. Their knowledge was oral, embodied, secretive. So, when the last true masters died without passing on their full wisdom, parts of the craft vanished with them. The intricate dance of alloys, the precise timing of the pour, the spiritual invocations that may have been as crucial as the physical techniques faded into the mists of time. In the wake of this cultural devastation, a void emerged. The bronzes remained, gleaming in museums and private collections, but the living, breathing art form that created them withered. Generations of potential artists were cut off from their heritage, left to wonder at the genius of their ancestors. Without the tools to fully grasp or replicate it, today, modern artists in Nigeria and beyond try to recreate the techniques. Some have come close reverse engineering tools, experimenting with alloys, using historical clues. But even they admit, something is missing. A formula, a rhythm, a spiritual layer that is no longer accessible. They stand before the ancient heads, tracing the lines with reverent fingers, seeking to unlock secrets that have long since turned to dust. And perhaps this is the greatest tragedy, not just the theft of the heads themselves, but the theft of how they were born. Colonialism didn't just loot objects, it looted time. It interrupted centuries of trial and error, of community-backed learning, of elders whispering secrets by the fire. The result, brilliant bronzes we can admire but not fully replicate. Montage of modern Nigerian sculptors examining ancient bronzes, casting wax models, and reflecting in voiceover about what knowledge may never return. In dimly lit studios and makeshift foundries, a new generation of artists grapples with the weight of lost knowledge. Their hands move over clay and wax, seeking to channel the spirits of long-gone masters. There's a gap, one sculptor muses, her eyes fixed on a half-formed mold. You can feel it in the work. We're reaching across centuries, trying to grasp something just beyond our fingertips. Another artist, his face illuminated by the glow of molten metal, speaks of dreams where ancient craftsmen guide his hands. Sometimes, he whispers, I think I've caught a glimpse of their methods. But then I wake, and the certainty slips away like smoke. The loss extends beyond technique. These modern artists speak of a spiritual disconnect, a severing from the rituals and beliefs that once infused every aspect of the bronze-making process. Our ancestors didn't just create art, an elder explains, his voice heavy with the burden of memory. They channeled the very essence of our people, our connection to the divine. That's what's missing now, not just skill, but soul. As we watch these contemporary creators at work, there's a palpable sense of both determination and melancholy. They are piecing together a puzzle with crucial pieces forever lost, striving to recreate a masterpiece from a faded, incomplete blueprint. Their efforts are valiant, their results often stunning in their own right. But the shadow of what once was, of what could have been, if the chain of knowledge had remained unbroken, looms large. Still, the story is not over. Across Yoruba lands, artists are reawakening. They may not replicate the exact techniques, but they carry the spirit. They innovate, they experiment, and most importantly, they remember. And in that remembering, something ancient flickers back to life. Not as a perfect replica, but as a living echo of what once was. In bustling markets and quiet villages, in urban galleries and rural workshops, a renaissance is slowly taking shape. Young hands learn to work with bronze, guided by elders who may not know all the old ways, but who carry the fire of cultural pride. New forms emerge, blending ancient aesthetics with contemporary themes, creating a bridge between past and future. There is a bittersweet beauty to this resurgence. It is a testament to the resilience of a people, to the enduring power of art to connect us across time and space. Yet it also serves as a stark reminder of what was lost, of the irreplaceable knowledge that slipped through the cracks of history. As the sun sets over the land that once gave birth to the Ife bronzes, we are left with a complex legacy. The heads themselves, scattered across the world, continue to captivate and inspire. But they also stand as silent witnesses to a profound cultural wound, to the violence of colonialism that reaches far beyond physical theft. In the end, perhaps the greatest homage we can pay to the lost masters of Ife is not to mourn what can never be fully recovered, but to celebrate and nurture the spark of creativity that still burns. For in every piece of bronze cast today, in every artist who looks to the past for inspiration while forging boldly into the future, the spirit of Ife lives on. The mystery of the bronzes may never be fully solved. The exact methods may remain forever out of reach. But as long as there are those who remember, who create, who strive to connect with their ancestral legacy, the art of Ife will never truly be lost. It will continue to evolve, to inspire, to challenge us to look deeper into the intricate dance between human skill and divine. Inspiration that gave birth to such timeless beauty, the journey of a stolen artifact is never just a matter of conquest. It is a chain of choices, a slow procession of profit, betrayal, and silence. Behind every Ife head displayed in a European museum, there is often a web of middlemen, African, Arab, and European, each playing a role in turning sacred heritage into a collector's prize. Let us rewind to the 19th and early 20th centuries. As colonial administrators spread across West Africa, so too did another kind of empire, the empire of museums, collectors, and auction houses. These weren't soldiers, they were anthropologists, curators, and enthusiasts. But make no mistake, their mission was conquest by curation, and they did not act alone. In Nigeria and surrounding regions, local middlemen emerged, some coerced, others opportunistic. These were often educated Africans employed by colonial officers, missionaries, or private collectors, fluent in both local languages and European expectations. They became brokers between the world of sacred shrines and the appetites of the West. Picture, if you will, a split-screen image. On one side, an African intermediary, his face a mask of conflicted emotions, negotiates with a village elder over a shrine relic. The elder's eyes are heavy with the weight of tradition and the pressure of necessity. On the other side of the screen, a British collector waits. Impatient fingers tapping against a leather case filled with coins and contracts. The air is thick with the scent of impending betrayal. Some of these intermediaries were unaware of the true value of what they facilitated. Others knew and chose the money. In a time when colonial rule crushed livelihoods, a bronze work or wooden mask could be exchanged for bags of rice, European cloth, or school fees. The shame is not in poverty, is in the system that made survival depend on selling the past. And so, bronzes once hidden in royal altars or ancestral groves began to vanish. Some were taken by force during punitive expeditions, torn from the hands of protesting priests and wrapped in the Union Jack. Others left quietly, sold in backroom exchanges, smuggled through coastal ports, wrapped in rags and labeled as ethnographic curiosities. Imagine now a slow pan across shipping crates labeled West Africa. Artifacts. Workers, their faces etched with lines of silent complicity, load them onto ships in Lagos. As the camera moves, Yoruba inscriptions fade in and out of view, ghostly reminders of the stories being erased with each crate that disappears into the hold. By the time these objects reached Europe, their stories had already been rewritten. Museum plaques called them primitive, anonymous, or simply from Nigeria. The names of their creators erased. The rituals they were part of ignored. The sacred oaths they embodied unmentioned. This was not just theft of an object, it was theft of context. A bronze head taken from a royal Yoruba lineage and placed behind glass in London becomes something else, a disconnected marvel, admired but not understood. It stands silent, divorced from the songs that once gave it voice, from the hands that once anointed it with palm oil and reverence. What's worse, these museums often refuse to return them. They argue that they are preserving the works, that they rescued them from obscurity. But obscurity for whom? Not for the Yoruba who once used them to speak to their ancestors. Not for the descendants who still remember the altars now empty, who still feel the ache of a cultural limb severed. Let your mind's eye juxtapose crowded European museum halls with silent village shrines. In the museum, tourists shuffle past, their eyes glazing over plaques that speak half-truths. In the shrine, candles flicker near vacant pedestals, their flames dancing in rhythm with the whispered prayers of those who remember what once stood there. The pain of this history isn't just about bronze or ivory. It is about being told that your culture is only valuable when someone else explains it, that your gods are only sacred when someone else owns them, that your past is only real when someone else profits from it. It is the pain of seeing your grandmother's stories labeled as myths, your grandfather's craftsmanship reduced to primitive art, and yet knowledge is rising, like a tide that cannot be turned back. Truth is seeping through the cracks of colonial narratives. Investigative historians, their eyes burning with the fire of justice, pore over dusty archives. Digital databases hum with the energy of reconnection, linking scattered pieces of heritage across continents. Community storytellers, their voices strong with the power of memory, weave tales that bridge past and present. They are tracing the steps backward, following the trail of receipts and whispers, of ship manifests and auction records. They are naming names not just of the British lords and German professors who now claim ownership, but of the African chiefs who betrayed their own, of the Arab traders who acted as go-betweens, of the European missionaries who saw idols where others saw ancestors. With every piece identified, with every provenance exposed, the quiet deals behind museum glass are being brought into the light. The shadows where cultural theft once lurked are shrinking, pushed back by the glare of uncomfortable truths. In Nigeria, a new generation is awakening to the echoes of empty shrines. They stand in museums in Lagos and Benin City, their eyes moving from photographs of their heritage in foreign lands to the vacant spaces where those pieces should be. Their hands clench, not in despair, but in determination. Across the ocean, in the hallowed halls of European institutions, curators shift uneasily. The questions they face are no longer about preservation techniques or exhibition schedules. They are about ethics, about the right to own, about the responsibility to return. The Ife heads, those masterpieces of bronze that once gazed upon kings, now stare blankly from behind bulletproof glass. But their eyes, though metal, seem to hold a challenge. They speak of a time when they were more than art, when they were conduits between worlds, when they were home. The question is no longer how the Ife heads got there. It's when will they come home? When will they breathe the air of Nigeria again? When will they feel the touch of those who understand not just their beauty, but their meaning? As we stand at this crossroads of history and justice, of memory and restitution, the air is charged with possibility. The story of these artifacts is not over. It is, perhaps, just beginning its most important chapter. For in the end, this is not just about objects returning to a place. It's about a people reclaiming their narrative. It's about restoring the broken circle of cultural continuity. It's about healing wounds that have festered for centuries beneath the surface of polite museum visits and academic debates. The journey home for these pieces will not be easy. It will be contested, negotiated, perhaps even fought over. But it is a journey that must be made, not just for the sake of Nigeria or Africa, but for the sake of humanity's shared heritage. As the sun sets over the Niger Delta, casting long shadows across the land where these bronzes were born, a whisper seems to rise from the earth itself. It speaks of patience, of perseverance, of the long arc of history bending towards justice. It reminds us that what was taken in silence can be reclaimed with voices raised in unity. The Ife heads, the Benin bronzes, the countless masks and figurines scattered across the world, they are listening, they are waiting, and someday, perhaps sooner than we think, they will answer the call of home. If the Ife head could speak not just as bronze, but as memory, witness, and spirit, what would it say? It has seen centuries pass. It has survived fire, flood, greed, exile. It has listened to prayers in the quiet of shrines and endured the cold silence of museum halls. But now, in a time when people are asking harder questions, maybe, it is ready to speak. It might begin like this. I was never meant to be alone. The Ife head was once part of a sacred ensemble. It lived among altars and lineage, surrounded by songs, libations, and whispered names of ancestors. Its meaning came not from the metal alone, but from the stories, rituals, and presence it represented. It was not art for art's sake, it was art for spirit's sake. To be removed from that circle is not preservation, it is estrangement. Imagine, if you will, a slow fade between a vibrant Yoruba ritual scene and a quiet museum gallery, where the same Fa head sits isolated behind glass. The contrast is stark, jarring. In one scene, life pulses through every movement, every chant. In the other, stillness reigns, broken only by the occasional shuffle of distant footsteps. The head might continue. They called me primitive, but they knew better. European curators and collectors often marveled at the realism and sophistication of Ife bronzes, whispering comparisons to Renaissance sculpture, and yet they labeled them as works of unknown tribes, as if that erasure made ownership easier. They called them discoveries, even when the people of Ife had never lost them. And so, the Ife head might speak again, not in anger, but in clarity. You did not discover me. You interrupted me. It might recall the moment it was lifted from its shrine. The silence in the grove, the hands that wrapped it in cloth, the ship that crossed the sea, away from ancestors and into archives. And it might say, every generation since has tried to interpret me, but none have truly heard me. But now, something is changing. In Nigeria and across the diaspora, artists, scholars, and spiritual custodians are reviving the old languages of meaning. Not just Yoruba, but the visual, musical, ritual languages that give these bronzes life again. Digital reconstructions are pairing lost artifacts with their true stories. Repatriation efforts are gaining legal and moral ground, and young people are asking, who are we without our objects? Who are we if we recover them? Picture a young Nigerian artist digitally reconstructing an ancestral shrine using a VR headset, surrounded by archival photos and oral historians. The past and future collide in this moment, technology becoming a bridge to reclaim what was lost. The Ife head, if it could speak today, might say this: I was never yours to keep. I was only yours to return. And to the children of the soil, to those who grew up seeing only photographs of what their ancestors once touched, it might whisper, I remember you, because these bronzes do not forget. They carry facial features of specific rulers, hairstyles of a specific era, scarification patterns from specific lineages. They are not anonymous, they are named, if not in writing, then in form. They are a mirror waiting to be looked into, not with pity or nostalgia, but with pride. Imagine a close-up of an Ife head's facial features slowly morphing into a living Nigerian elder's face, with soft drums in the background. The connection across time becomes visceral, undeniable. In the end, when the Ife head finally speaks, it will not beg for pity, nor demand revenge. It will remind the world of something powerful, that African history was never silent. It was silenced, and now it speaks again, not in fragments, but in full voice. The Ife head might say, I am more than metal. I am memory made tangible. It would speak of the hands that shaped it, the rituals that breathed life into its form. It would recount the whispered prayers of generations, the weight of expectation placed upon royal brows. The head might describe the scent of palm oil offerings, the taste of kola nut on reverent lips. I have seen empires rise and fall. It might continue. I have witnessed the ebb and flow of power, the shifting tides of belief. I have been both revered and forgotten, worshipped and warehoused. The Ife head would speak of the moment of rupture, the day it was torn from its sacred space. It might describe the confusion, the sense of violation, the long journey across unfamiliar waters, the strange new world it found itself in. They called me art, it might say, but I am so much more. I am history. I am identity. I am the embodiment of a people's spirit. The head would recount its years in exile, the sterile touch of gloved hands, the flash of cameras, the murmur of foreign tongues attempting to decipher its meaning. It might speak of the loneliness, the disconnection from purpose. But even in silence, it would say, I have been speaking. To those who know how to listen, I have never stopped telling our story. The Ife head might then turn its gaze to the present, to the growing movement for restitution and cultural reclamation. It would speak of the fire in young eyes as they rediscover their heritage, the determination in voices raised in demand for justice. I see you, it might say to these new generations. I see the spark of recognition, the hunger for connection. You are the ones I have been waiting for. The head would speak of the power of return, not just physical repatriation, but spiritual reconnection. It would describe the potential energy waiting to be unleashed. When artifacts are reunited with their true custodians, imagine, it might say, the stories we could tell if we were whole again. The wisdom we could impart if we were back in the hands of those who truly understand us. The Ife head would remind us that its value lies not in its market price or its artistic merit alone, but in its role as a keeper of cultural memory. It would speak of the responsibility that comes with such knowledge. I am not a relic, it might declare. I am a living link to the past, a bridge to the future. I am a testament to the resilience and creativity of a people who have faced unimaginable challenges and yet continue to thrive. As it nears the end of its speech, the FA head might offer a challenge to all who hear its words. Look at me, it would say, really look. See beyond the bronze, beyond the patina of age. See the faces of your ancestors reflected in my features. Hear the echoes of ancient songs in the curve of my lips. Feel the weight of history in my gaze. The head would speak of the power of reclamation, not just of objects, but of narratives, of dignity, of self-determination. It would remind us that true healing comes not from forgetting the past, but from confronting it honestly and moving forward with purpose. I am ready, the Ife head might conclude. Ready to come home. Ready to take my place once more in the circle of life and meaning. Ready to speak not just of what was, but of what can be. And in its final words, the FA head would offer both a promise and a challenge. I have been patient, I have endured, but now is the time for action. Bring us home. Let us speak together once more. For in our reunion lies not just the healing of the past, but the key to a future where all cultures are honored, where all voices are heard. Remember, it would say, I am not just an object to be admired. I am a call to action, a reminder of unfinished business. I am the voice of generations past and the hope of generations to come. Listen closely. The Ife head might whisper as its voice fades. For in my silence, you will hear the roar of a people rising, reclaiming, and reimagining their place in the world. You're listening to Under Baobab Skies, and the final words are always a beginning. And now, as the stars trace slow arcs across the night sky, we bring our journey to a gentle close. We have walked the oil-soaked paths of the Niger Delta, where calloused hands once crushed red palm kernels beneath ancient stones. We have seen the daily toll etched into the backs and bones of workersmen who braved the hornet buzz of British overseers, and women whose dignity was tested at the edge of hunger and resistance. We traveled through time and village memory, standing silently at the threshold where labor met empire. And in those moments, we witnessed more than just toil, we witnessed endurance, the kind passed down like stubborn seeds in dry soil. We heard the whispers of ancestral women weaving rebellion into lullabies, and the tired laughter of men who, though broken in body, refused to break in spirit. These are not simply stories of suffering. They are stories of witness, of people who refused to disappear into footnotes and profit sheets, of mothers who turned palm oil into protest, of fathers who carved pride from empty bowls, of entire families who held their histories tightly, like sacred gourds, refusing to let the colonizer spill them onto foreign soil. As the twilight horizon settles over the Niger Delta, imagine a lone canoe gliding silently over dark, reflective waters. The scene fades to glowing lanterns hung from trees in a quiet village square, their light a testament to the enduring spirit of a people. Let your thoughts settle now, like red dust on a market floor. Let your breathing slow to the rhythm of distant drumming, soft and steady. Know that in listening, you have honored the memory of many those who once stood barefoot in swamps, whose names may not be etched in textbooks, but whose blood greased the gears of empire. We have journeyed through the heart of a land where history seeps from the very soil, where every tree holds the whispers of generations past. We've felt the weight of colonial chains, not just in iron, but in the subtle bonds of economic exploitation that still echo through time. Remember the faces we've encountered weathered by sun and struggle, yet alight with an inner fire that centuries of oppression could not extinguish. Think of the hands that have touched this earth. We've stood in the shadow of oil rigs that loom like metal giants over villages where children once played freely. We've smelled the acrid tang of progress mixed with the sweet rot of environmental devastation. And through it all, we've heard the steady heartbeat of a culture that refuses to be silenced. In the quiet corners of modest homes, we've seen grandmothers pass down more than recipes, they've passed down the very essence of survival, wrapped in stories and proverbs as rich and complex as the ecosystem they fought to preserve. We've witnessed the transformation of everyday objects into symbols of defiance. A cooking pot becomes a drum of protest, a headwrap a banner of cultural pride. In marketplaces and meeting grounds, we've felt the electric current of change, humming beneath the surface of seemingly mundane exchanges. As we conclude our journey, let us not forget the taste of bitter cola on our tongues, a reminder that even in moments of celebration, there is always an undercurrent of the struggles that have brought us here. Let the memory of palm wine shared among elders remind us of the importance of community in the face of adversity. Tonight, their stories have risen like steam from a cooking pot, warm, heavy, and necessary. They curl around us, these tales of resistance and resilience, seeping into our consciousness like the rich red earth stains bare feet. You are now under the baobab skies, where the branches of ancient trees stretch out like protective arms over a land that has seen both incredible beauty and unimaginable pain. As you drift towards sleep, carry with you the weight of these stories, for they are not just history, they are a living, breathing testament to the indomitable human spirit. May your dreams walk gently through the memory of those who came before you. May you find in them the strength to face your own battles and the wisdom to recognize the echoes of the past in the challenges of today. And as the night deepens, as the sounds of the delta fade to a gentle hum, remember that you now carry a piece of this land within you. You are a keeper of its stories, a witness to its struggles, and a part of its ongoing journey towards justice and healing. Until we meet again under these vast African skies, may your steps be guided by the courage of those who walked these paths before us. May your voice join the chorus of those who speak truth to power. And may your heart remain open to the lessons that history, in all its complexity, has to teach. Sleep well, knowing that you have honored the past and, in doing so, have taken a step towards shaping a more just future. The journey may end here for now, but the story, the great, unfolding story of human dignity and perseverance continues on. Good night, and may the spirits of the Delta watch over your dreams.